Welcome to the 3 Knockdown Rule. Starring Mario Lopez and Steve Kim. Presented by Hustler Casino.
Hey guys, don't forget to like and subscribe to our show on YouTube. It's fun. It's funny. I break this guy's balls. His wig looks crazy every week, but it's still worth doing it. Check out these badass shows we got right now. Check it out.
Even though Mario's on it, you'll still learn something, and it's still some insightful analysis. And then I bring the funny, and I don't know what he brings.
No.
What are you talking about? I'm the star of the show here.
You bring the grumpy.
Oh, but the grumpy. Anyway, like and subscribe.
Yes,
3
please.
Knockdown
We
Rule.
appreciate you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 3 Knockdown Rule is back in effect, brought to you by Hustler Casino. I'm Steve Kim, joined by my co-host, Mario Nick Van Exel Lopez. 1, 2, 3, Cancun!
Wow, you went old school with Nick Van
Lake
Exel.
Show.
By the way,
Love the Lake Show.
there is a lot of NBA players that hit Cancun. As soon as their season is over, I should say. Quick shout out to Smoking Tim Frazier.
We've got a jam-packed show, the bout sheet for this week. Special guest Todd Grisham of The Zone, taking a look back at Paul Chavez and the card upcoming from Louis Armstrong Stadium, and some Undisputed boxing video games updates.
Hey, Mario Lopez here, guys, and I've got something amazing to share with you today. If getting in the best shape of your life this summer is on your bucket list, but you can't find the motivation to do it, well, you're not just consistent. You are really struggling mentally about it. You gotta try GPL1. I'm telling you, it shuts off the food noise so you can eat like a thin person and lose weight without starving. Best place to get it is from LifeRx. It's just $250 a month flat, even if your dose increases. So get started today with LifeRx today. Just visit LifeRx3.com.
And ladies and gentlemen, this podcast is sponsored by Hustler Casino, where the heat isn't just outside, it's on the gaming floor too. All summer long, the prizes are getting heated up at LA's only luxury casino.
The heat is on.
Okay, Glenn Fry. Play your favorite game, Baccarat, Blackjack, Poker, and more to earn entries for their summer cash drawings on July 8th and July 27th. They're giving away $1,000 every 2 hours from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. That's serious summer money just waiting to be won. Don't miss out. Stop by and get in the game. Okay, when we come back, Todd Grisham joins us on the Championship Hotline.
Streaming live right on YouTube.
Welcome to the big leagues, kid.
$1.2 million.
And I'm losing in this fucking game. What the fuck?
There's a 400K flip. If I win by the way, you get 10 grand.
Fucking straddle!
For my fans!
What? I read it twice!
Wow. All in a call.
I'm not fucking leaving!
Raise it up.
And we're back on the 3 Knockdown Rule, and joining us on the Championship Hotline, an old friend of mine. You know what? He's not from Harlem, but he's a globetrotter. He goes all over the place. He was in Anaheim a couple weeks ago, and this week he will be at Louis Armstrong Stadium in New York for the big DAZN pay-per-view. Todd, welcome aboard to the 3 Knockdown Rule. Real quickly, let's move back a little bit. June 28th, you were at the Honda Center. Paul Chavez didn't exactly play to rave reviews. This is a bit of a tricky question for you. Are fights like that hard to call?
You know, yes, normally, if there wasn't so much energy in the arena, if there weren't so many, I mean, you've heard people say it, there's young fans there making noise, there's influencers there, there's just a lot of energy surrounding the fight. There were brawls in the stands, by the way. So normally, yes, but there's so many talking points surrounding Jake Paul that you wouldn't have around a normal fight that it's not as bad as, if you got Shakur Stevenson running away from somebody or Devin Haney. I mean, those are tough. They really are tough because you're not trying to bury the fighter, but at the same time, you're like, we want more excitement. And look, Jake Paul, say what you will, he was the aggressor in that fight. He was throwing punches. It was all on Chavez. And who would have thought you'd say that the Mexican fighter was the one shying away from the action? But for that specific fight, it wasn't too bad. But yeah, I much prefer, a Gotti Ward type fight.
Yeah, Todd, nice to see you too. I happen to be friendly with Todd. You rat bastard is not just your friend right there. Hey, Todd, here's the thing about the fight. At least going into it, I almost feel like it's a Ponzi scheme. because you know what you're getting, and you're like, okay, Chavez is going to he looked like decent shape. He's going to muster up some sort of pride. The Mexican in him is going to let him at least throw hands. The fact that he didn't let his hands go until the last 3 rounds, that's where people start getting these conspiracies like, oh, it's got to be rigged or it's got to be sort of understood. Is it more of a case of he is so clever in selecting his opponents, Jake Paul, where the guy is either shot, long in the tooth, been inactive, needs the money, in this case, coming out of rehab with Chavez Jr., and it's just excellent opponent selection?
I'm sorry, Steve. Is this Jason Whitlock I'm talking to, or is this Mario Lopez? You got the conspiracy theories here. We got Ponzi schemes. What's going on here?
I said people.
Hold on. There was no mention of Caitlin Clark, so no.
I'm the first one. Come on. Is that not the case? You thought at least he was going to let his hands go, Kim. You had to think that.
But there's a reason why Jake Ponzi chose him. Am I right or wrong, Todd, on that assertion?
Well, for reasons I stated.
The reason Jake Paul chose him was because he's a former champion. He can hang that on his resume. It's because he brought in a big crowd, which they had a really big crowd, #1 revenue-generating fight in the history of the Honda Center. Those are the reasons he brought him in there. I think Jake Paul was hoping he would give a better fight. And it's easy to say after these fights, Jake Paul's nitpicking these fighters. These guys aren't even close to being competitive. But look at the odds ahead of time. I mean, you look at some of these pro fighters that are taking mandatory defenses or whatever. They're like 25 or 30 to 1 favorites. I mean, Jake Paul was, I think, a 6 to 1 favorite, which is still pretty big. But the other fights, like even Tyson was only 2 to 1. Tyron Woodley was like 2 or 3 to 1. So Jake Paul, according to the bookmakers, and the money never lies, is facing much tougher, much closer competition at this stage of his career than any of your favorite so-called real fighters.
I agree with that statement, and you're absolutely right. However, now we've gotten to the point where, is it the WBA that has now ranked him
number 14?
Come on, man.
Yeah, but who's number 13, Steve? Is a guy who's like 4-0, who's fought no one with a winning record? I mean, these organizations, if you're going to say he shouldn't be 15th, then you got to tell me if the guy who's ranked 14th would beat him, and I don't think he will.
Well, based on what you just said, Todd, after we record, I'm going to do a deep dive on the WBA cruiserweight ratings. I'm going to do that with a fine-tooth comb, as they say. Here's the issue, though. How far can Jake Paul take this? Because on the flip side, someone told me on Twitter, Steve, don't be offended by him being ranked, because now maybe he will fight some guys that you find palatable.
I agree. How could once we see him against a top, I wouldn't say a top level guy, but someone who's legitimately ranked in the top 15, who we'd say that's a legitimate top 15 guy. If he beats someone like that, then he's the real deal. But remember, no amateur background whatsoever, who's fighting in these Disney fights, the YouTube fights against KSI's brother was his debut against Deji. Paul didn't even know how to throw a jab. So considering the experience that he's had right now, who knows how good he can be after he's been fighting for 10 years. I don't know, but I want to find out. And he's captured the imagination, as I said, of a lot of young people in the United States to watch boxing. If you saw the Ring Magazine's Instagram feed the other day, they did a thing where Hamza Shiraz walked around and interviewed people in Times Square asking who Edgar Berlanga was. Because Berlanga was like, I'm the king of New York. And they interviewed like 10, 15 people. Not a single person knew who he was. But if you ask those same people, who's Jake Paul? They say, oh, he's the boxer guy. They know who he is. So to me, Jake Paul is a blessing for boxing. You know, you mentioned Caitlin Clark. They've ostracized her. The WNBA's done terrible press. They haven't had her back. It's been awful. And I'm not saying Jake Paul's Caitlin Clark, but at the same time, he's getting a lot of that negative reaction when I think a lot more people should be saying, hey, wait a minute. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's focus on the good things and the eyes he's bringing to the sport. I mean, think about how many more people saw Floyd Schofield do what he did to Tevin Farmer if he wasn't on that Jake Paul fight. I mean, that is one of the big blessings that he's brought to the sport is the eyeballs.
I appreciate the analogy. And yes, I agree with you on that end. And listen, I've always said it takes balls to get in that ring. Yeah. I don't care who you are. And the fact that he didn't have a vast amateur background and he only wrestled growing up, I tip my hat to him. I give him major props. And he's been brilliant as far as his marketing and being able to build a brand and make a lot of money and make other people money. And I like it. I like the way it raises awareness level of the sport and all the other fighters, and the fighters especially fighting under his banner. I think where people get upset is his brash arrogance in saying he wants to challenge everyone from Anthony Joshua to Gervonta Davis. You have like 180-pound difference or something like that. You know, and I think that it's like, yo, bro, we're with you, and it just gets a little outlandish. Does that make sense?
But keep this in mind. This is a fact. We thought he was on the 1-yard line to land the Canelo Alvarez fight. That fight was on the verge of being announced. And to your point, Todd, I give him credit. He's created an industry for himself. He's helped move along careers. And if you would have stopped that card right after Zurdo Ramirez against Ortiz,
Good night of fights.
said that's a solid night of boxing.
Yeah.
And you're right. Floyd Schofield hit a home run. Zurdo Ramirez had a really tough fight against Ortiz. We saw Hammer Hands Rodriguez resuscitate his career, by the way, against an MVP fighter. So overall, it was a good night of boxing. And unlike Todd, I had the option to leave early. But as I'm driving out of Lot 4 from the Anaheim, a Honda Center, I said, you know what?
You beat the traffic.
I beat the traffic. I'm good. But Todd got paid well, so he had to stick around. Now, Todd, another paid gig you're doing this Saturday. You're going to be there all week in Queens, New York, Louis Armstrong Stadium, Ring 3. Now, you brought up Shakur Stevenson. Now, if he hears that clip of what you just said, he's going to get awfully salty with you at the pre-fight meetings. But I do think this is the truth. I don't think there's just pressure on him to win. That expectation is there. I believe, based on some of the comments of Turki Al-Sheikh, there's pressure on him to entertain.
Well, I'll ask you this question. When was the last time you saw a world title fight with an undisputed champion, a top 5 pound-for-pound guy, be in the co-main event to a non-title fight? And if you've never seen that before, tell me why the reason that is. I think we all know what it is. Mario, you're in the entertainment business. Boxing is entertainment. People want to leave after they've just seen fireworks. And there's a big hesitation. Not from me. You're talking about what will Shakur react to what I'm saying. I just did the fighter interviews earlier today, so I don't have to worry about it, by the way. So I'm good and clear. But there's a reason. It's because he's not trusted by Turkey to put on the fireworks. We know Zepeda is. That's all he knows how to do. Now, Shakur can flip the script and do it, and he says he's going to do it. But there's a reason Edgar Berlanga and Hamza Shiraz are in the main event and not Shakur Stevenson. People want to be entertained. They want to see knockouts.
And Mario, this is a fact. I was there for the De Los Santos fight. And you were angry that I asked you to watch it. I was angry that I was there. And then for the last fight, is Top Rank in Newark in his hometown. People walked out. That's a fact.
That not only is that a fact, it's frustrating in the sense that you see Shakur Stevenson, good-looking kid, excellent fighter from a pure boxing standpoint, probably the most talented elite in that weight class. However, only the hardcore purists are going to really appreciate and be grateful for that. At the end of the day, just like you said, Todd, you do want to be entertained. How you win does matter. It's better. Say what you want, a little rough around the edges. You know you're going to want to watch that guy fight. Whenever you hear he's fighting, you're going to want to make sure you tune in. Now, this is such a contrast in styles that it may bring out the best in Shakur. Remains to be seen. But I appreciate and like Turkey's philosophy a lot. If you're not going to entertain, you're not here. Why am I going to shell out the money? It's to his discretion, and I love that.
Do you remember when Tim Bradley fought Ruslan Provodnikov?
Yep.
And Tim Bradley taken so much criticism for his performance against Pacquiao, and he was boring and he didn't earn it. And he went out there like a warrior and almost got his career ended. But still, I could see Shakur saying, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm going to show you guys that I can do it. Will his hands hold up? I don't know if he wants to do that. But I envision him being so fed up that he's going to pull a Tim Bradley, not to that degree, but he's going to sit in the pocket a lot more. And when he gets Zepeda hurt, and Farmer had him hurt several times, he's going to go for the kill. At least I hope so.
I know that on these shows with Turkey, there's no ring card girls. At Times Square, they use people in the costumes, right? Yeah. They got to have Tom and Jerry. They have to. Tom and Jerry holding up the ring cards for this one.
Funny. That's right, because I thought that was just when we were in Saudi Arabia, but that was the case in
New York.
In New York as well. Hey, I respect it. Okay, the culture. Listen, speaking of which, last time we were in New York on Turkey's card, it sounded good on paper, but the execution was just not there. You can't have a public event and the public not allowed to see it in the middle of the traffic. You're honking horns, this and that. I think it was a much smarter move, and it should be a much more pleasing, fun event at this new location. I think it's going to be. I think this one will be a big success. At least on paper, it looks like they'll be able to pull it off.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, all these venues like Alcatraz sounds cool, or fighting on the top of the Empire State Building sounds cool. But when it comes down to it, it's all about the atmosphere. Steve, you've been to enough events at the Rosemont Horizon and Chicago, or the Blue Horizon where Chris Algieri used to fight all the time, where there's like maybe 800 people there, but it's just buzzing and electric, and like York Hall in London. I mean, it's just crazy atmosphere. Those are the atmospheres where fighters really rise up, as opposed to you're fighting at this cool destination. It's all about the energy in the stadium.
Yeah. The bottom line is this: there's never been a bad fight where someone says, "Wow, great atmosphere." No, you need a good fight. The fight is part of the atmosphere, because you talk about Bradley Provodnikov. What the story was, there was only about 2,500 people there. It was one of the coldest nights ever. People were ripping the fight.
But that was a fun atmosphere nonetheless. And a lot of magic seems to happen at the StubHub there. You at least had the opportunity to have the people, and the people that were there were lively and were
Mario,
into it.
After the first round, when Provodnikov showed, "Hey, I'm here to fight and I'm going to give you hell," it became a different place.
Right.
No more people walked in, but it felt like there was a buzz in the arena.
Absolutely.
Now, Todd, you talked about Edgar Berlanga. I think he's finally ended the victory lap over losing all 12 rounds to Canelo Alvarez. And that was a funny bit by Ring Magazine, where Berlanga says, "I'm the king of New York, and no one in New York knows who the hell he is." Bert Sugar had a line for that. This guy's not even a household name in his own household. Here's the question. Mario and I have been high on Hamza Shiraz, but I'll be honest with you, Todd. I thought he gave a very flaccid performance against Carlos Adamas. Have you spoken to him? What was the reason for that effort? Was it the drain of making 160? Did it finally catch up to him?
Well, he's the kind of guy that's not going to make excuses, but it was obvious he had a hand injury. Someone said he broke his hand, but he did have a hand injury. He did say it was very tough to cut the weight. And don't take away from his opponent. You get that Cuban style. It's not easy to deal with. That was a big step up in competition for him. But he thinks Berlanga just doesn't have those same skills. He thinks Berlanga, he views him as more of a brute and someone who just thinks he's way better than he is. Hamza Shiraz, to me, he's like the Pakistani James Bond. You know, the way he looks, the way he uses his tools in the ring. I mean, he's got that feel to him. Now, what's going to happen in New York City when a guy from New York who's saying, "I will die in the ring, I'll happily die. If that's where I die, that's where I wanted to die." When you've got that kind of dog coming after you for 12 rounds, how are you going to handle that? That's the fascinating angle of this fight. And Shiraz, to his credit, says, "I'm not going to back away from this guy. I'm not going to be stupid at the same time, but he's going to feel my power." And just ask Ammo Williams. Shiraz has a lot of power.
I think there's validity to, you saw visually the injury that he did have this last fight. And he's such a big guy. He's been in here. He's a nice kid, gentleman. I am shocked that he's able to make a 160. So I got to imagine that was a factor. And Adamas was a quality opponent too. So I think all those played in. I think the weight will help. I think him being fully healthy will also help. Berlanga, as kooky as he may be, kid does have punching power. So he is dangerous early on. So I think Shiraz does have to be smart in there.
You know what? I'm going to say something that is counterintuitive as we lose Todd Grisham for a quick second. But Mario, I actually think that Shiraz has to be the aggressor on the front foot. I believe he has more compact, straight punches. Yep. And if he can hurt him early, that might take a lot of the courage away from Berlanga. That's my opinion.
I agree, but you have to be calculated, and you can't be reckless with your aggression too, because he does have some heavy hands, Berlanga, and he is moving up in weight. Shiraz. So I think if he's firing up that jab, follows up with those straight right hands, and maybe starts getting inside a little bit, it should be a really good fight.
Also on this card, which is a DAZN pay-per-view feature, and welcome back to Todd, WBC junior welterweight titles on the line. Alberto Puello takes on Subriel Matias, and then light heavyweight action, David Morrell takes on Iman Kadiev, and again, our guy Todd Grisham, who is back, will be joining us. But Todd, you have other duties. You have branched out. You've got a vast portfolio. Also on the resume of Todd Grisham, you are the vice president of global acquisitions. What a fancy title.
Yeah.
The Undisputed boxing video games. There's a lot of things going on there with you guys.
Well, they let me pick my own title, and that's the fanciest one I could come up with.
Nice.
I talked to my mother, who lives down in Atlanta. I said, she loves that word. I'm like, "Mom, what's the fanciest name you can think of?" She goes, "Well, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I span the globe looking for fighters." "Well, maybe global something." I was like, "Well, how about global acquisitions?" "Well, that sounds fancy to me." So that's what, shout out to Mom. So that's what I went with. But yeah, basically I was in charge of signing all the fighters, all the managers, all the trainers to the roster. And if you followed the Undisputed video game, you know, we've got a roster that is really incredible. We've got all the top guys. But let me tell you, the number one signing had to be media mogul Steve Kim. In fact, you've just been put in the game. Steve, do we have your
Put it up
render
there,
here?
fellas. Put it up there.
Yo.
Look at this, Mario. Tell me your thoughts.
I'm speechless.
What?
He looks
good,
like
huh?
he looks like a combination of like Kim Jong-un and a BTS member, and
But older.
well, like kind of in between. That's why I said
Yeah,
a combination. And like I was like, the jawline is and the wig is just next level. But that's my only. Everybody else looks fantastic. That's my only issue with the thing.
Todd, I'm requesting, and I know you got some sources up there. Can we do another scan? My hair is much different now than when we did that in 2022.
Oh my!
You look fatter than too. If I'm be blunt,
My tight push-ups have shaved me down a little bit.
Yeah, let's get you back in the scanning.
I'm looking at it. You look very, very. I have it right here. He looks like he's about to do what's that? Squid Games. He's about to. My guy's about to do Squid Games and get whacked. Look at that, Frazier. He looks.
Hey, I wouldn't
once in a while, Kim.
I wouldn't want to meet that guy in a back alley for a number of reasons, Mario.
This is the guy you meet in the back alley when you haven't paid up.
But Todd, you guys, Undisputed, and I'm a part of it too, just for full disclosure, we are now adding more roster fighters to the roster month by month.
Yeah, in fact, we just did our latest DLC drop, which has been a huge success. David Benavidez, we called it the Mexican Monster Pack. There's 7 fighters in there. David Benavidez, Andy Ruiz, Fernando Vargas, Charles Martin, the list goes on. And we actually put in 2 free fighters. I don't know if you can see behind me, guys. I got the poster printed out. I wanted to get your take for the first time ever. Jack Johnson versus Jack Dempsey.
That's a cool poster. I was going to tell you, that's a very cool poster. Like the old school throwback feel.
Yeah, well, hey, if you see, we're going to show some footage here of the fighters in the game. Wanted to get your take, guys. I mean, rewind about 100 years ago, this was the fantasy fight. You know, who would have won? Steve, what do you think, Dempsey or Johnson?
Okay, it depends on the rules, because if it's a 15-round fight, because one thing about the Galveston Giant, Jack Johnson, he could pick and parry shots, but he would take his time.
Bro, how realistic was it that they were really going, I don't even know if we've ever had this conversation, Kim, when they were going like 50, 60 rounds.
Right.
Were they 50, 60, 30-minute rounds?
I think the rules were a little bit different. If it was a knockdown, it in the round. There wasn't always 3 minutes at a time, I don't believe, because who would want to stick around for 8 hours for one fight?
Bro, that's one fight. I don't know if it's physically possible.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Well, keep in mind.
I'm leaning towards the Galveston Giant.
Yeah, well, remember now, the Galveston Giant, he would just lay on guys and he would clinch them. If you used today's rules and pulled away the clinching, that really puts him at a disadvantage. But at the same time, Steve, as you know, Dempsey was known for low blows and a forearm shimmer, and he was the king of, before the neutral corner, he'd stand right there and wait for you to get up and just drop you again. So both guys would have to, if we played or fought under current rules,
it's crazy. They didn't make you go to a neutral corner.
They didn't, and he used to stand right over the guy, and that was a famous fight where he knocked a guy down 7 times, Louis Firpo. Yeah. But one thing about Jack Johnson, he was very slick. You want to talk about the art of boxing? He didn't do Tom and Jerry. He kind of stood right in front of you, and he caught punches with his gloves extremely well. And the guy had guts. I mean, think about this. As a black guy in that part of America at this time, he one time got a speeding ticket for driving 100 miles per hour. It was a $50 ticket.
He gave him 100.
He gave him 100. I'm going the same speed, the same way. So that courage right there, that needs to be in the video games. I'm going to go with Jack Johnson on overall skill.
That's what exactly.
All right. Well, we played it out. 12-round rules, 12-round fight under current rules. And believe it or not, Jack Dempsey, unanimous decision, came out of the gate on fire, racked up a lot of those early rounds. And it looked like Johnson coming on strong late. But in the end, it was Dempsey 7 rounds to 5.
It's not like we were picking him. He was going to blow him out. It was going to be close one way or the other. But okay, Dempsey on point.
And
there you go.
And what are some of the future announcements you can hint at for Undisputed, Todd?
Wow, you always put me on the spot here.
That's what I do.
One of the guys is fighting this weekend. I'll tell you that. Big name fighter coming in the game soon. We've got, and we've got something big coming towards the end of the fall. We've got so many fighters in the roster that are just waiting to be put in the game that we're working on. So some big names still to come. And the latest DLC, like I said, has been really hot right now. So
we got to get Mario in the game. I know he costs a lot. We got to get Mario's mug in the game.
Hey,
what are those royalties? I'm going
to be with a smile, though, not with your scowl. I'm going to be happy to be in the game. He looks like he will.
Look, being next to this guy all the time. Good. Anyway, Todd, look, we'll be watching you throughout the week. Good luck on Saturday. Hope you have some real fights to call.
Todd.
Todd, join us again. We appreciate you.
Hey, it was a lot of fun, guys. Thanks for having me on.
And we'll be back on the 3 Knockdown Rule, brought to you by Hustler Casino. And we're back on the 3 Knockdown Rule, brought to you by Hustler Casino. Mario, Todd Grisham is a funny guy.
He is really good dude, and I like his energy when he calls the fights, and I think he's going to have a good weekend. That should be a fun event nonetheless.
I remember when I first saw Todd, he actually co-hosted or called some of the fights on Friday Night Fights on ESPN, his days there with Teddy Atlas.
Old school. He's not that old, is
Now,
he?
you want to talk about fire and ice. And it was actually funny that Todd just leaned into, like, this is who I am. I'm going to be funny. And I think he'd go out of his way to, I don't say agitate Teddy, but to bring out the best in Teddy. And it was really funny because there's such a contrast in teams.
Yeah.
Mario, I'm going to say this about William Zepeda. For all the pressure on Shakur to win the crowd, as I said in my article, K9's Corner for Snack.com, I believe Zepeda has to do his part and not get discouraged. I've seen so many fights where a guy gets outboxed early, he gets hit, not hard but blind, and they clam up. He's going to have to be willing to hit through contact.
I really hope we don't see Shakur, Oscar Valdez 2.0 again, which is a possibility. I think Zepeda has been active and he's fought fighters that are sort of emulating a Shakur sort of style. I think he's going in with the right momentum. He's got a tall task in front of him with probably the most talented guy in the division. But if he makes it nasty, he makes it tough, he gets in his face, gives him uncomfortable, it's a small ring, maybe he hurts his hand, you never know.
I said this jokingly to Eric Gomez. Eric says, how do we win this fight? I said, your guy has to be willing to get hit enough and to be standing in the line of fire that he breaks Shakur's hands and then he capitalizes on it late in the fight.
That's not a bad strategy at all. It really isn't.
Could you imagine the corner? Hey, William, you're not getting hit nearly enough. You're not breaking his hand. If you want to win this fight, you better stick your head out there. But look, you go back to Chavez Taylor. Julio Cesar Chavez did what a lot of fighters in the late rounds would not have been able to do against that version of Meldrick Taylor. Hit through contact.
And hold on, but let me pause you there. A lot of it too, though, he parried a lot. You look at Chavez's face at the end of that round. At the end of that fight,
it was pretty clean.
And there were over 1,300 punches thrown from Taylor, and it is very clean, very clean. And then you look at Taylor's, and that's where
car accident.
Yeah, he looks like he got in a severe car accident.
And of course, the biggest difference is, and I understand there are variables. Chavez had extremely heavy hands. Zepeda's very active. There's going to be a lot of volume. I just don't know if he can punch hard enough to break up or at least disrupt what Shakur Stevenson wants to do, but that's why they fight the fight.
News and notes.
A couple of news and notes here before we move on. David Benavidez, it's interesting. This seemed to come out of nowhere. There was a lot of talk about him fighting Callum Smith in the fall. It's now going to be Anthony Yard.
Yeah, interesting. I like that he's staying active.
Well, I mean, he's going to fight twice this year. He fought in or late January, I believe. Right on my birthday, he fought David Morrell.
Right.
He had a baby, and I think, according to his father, wanted to spend some quality time with the family. I get that.
And this fight is scheduled for when?
I believe October or November, and it's going to be on one of the Turki Al-Sheikh cards. I mean, this is a guy that said, look, I'm a Las Vegas fighter. I'm with PBC. Well, now he's not a Vegas fighter.
Well, that'd be 3 times this year.
And
twice. Oh, that's only twice. I thought he had another one.
So it's normal.
Gosh, see,
so it's normal.
So it is normal. I was hoping it was a 3rd time. I thought there was another one, because then I would say that's pretty active by today's standards.
By today's standards,
Correct.
which isn't a very high standard.
No.
And also, this came out now. Some business has to be taken care of in a couple weeks. A fight that we are going to talk about. Bam Rodriguez takes on Cafu for a unification bout. It was announced over the weekend by His Excellency. Should Bam Rodriguez get through that fight, he's going to fight Puma Martinez in another unification bout sometime in November as part of a show that's going to have Brian Norman against Devin Haney. That's a stacked lineup.
That is a stacked lineup. I like that. And you know what? Props to Devin Haney for getting in there with a dangerous individual.
Say what you want about the 4 caps. Devin Haney whatever you want to say, he's the one guy that's been willing, ready, and able to get in there with the other blue chip guys. Before we move on to Ask Mario, we just want to let you know, hey, are you looking to get involved with 3 Knockdown Rule and sponsor our show? We have some spots available. Please email us at info@boxbid.io. Once again, that's info@boxbid.io. Boxbid is an online platform that helps professional boxers connect with their fans by providing exclusive Fight Week merchandise, memorabilia, and sponsorships. You can even buy a shout-out on boxbid.io. They handle our sponsorships, and we are proudly working with boxbid.io. All right, now we move on to the Ask Mario segment of this program. Here's one from Omar, the co-star. What's this talk about Jake Paul being ranked? If they rank him, does that discredit their rankings?
Well, we discussed this a little bit with Todd. What I do, I guess, like about it, or I find positive in it, is that now he is legitimately forced to sort of fight someone in his age range.
Yeah.
And that can actually fight. So we're going to see what he's actually made of. Be careful what you ask for, because you'll get it.
And by the way, Omar, the WBA ratings have been discredited long before Jake Paul. Here's one from Christian. Does it make you mad when a quote-unquote mega fight becomes official, gains a lot of attention, then completely flops or is underwhelming? I see Canelo Bud being underwhelming. Sucks when you have friends over and the fight doesn't deliver. Hopefully the undercard is solid, though.
Yeah, well, the first one that comes to mind is like Pacquiao Mayweather. There was no more hype, no bigger hype than that fight. It was a little underwhelming. This one, honestly, and maybe I'm the eternal optimist, I think it will be exciting just based on the personalities of both fighters.
Seems Crawford to be heating up. Yeah, and look, there's an expectation to whom much is given, much is expected. And look, the fight in 2015 that you referenced was a huge letdown, and I do think it actually had some negative connotations about the sport and certainly a negative impact on the industry as a whole. Let's hope for the best on the night of September 13th. Here's one from our great friend Clay Stevenson. Hey, Mario. Oscar seems to have a pep in his promotional step these days. He doesn't seem to stress when it comes to Ryan. What is the scenario with Oscar overall? Mario, on that night when I was in Anaheim, Paul Chavez wasn't very heated. Ryan Garcia and De La Hoya, they were heated on Twitter that night. Ugh.
Well, Ryan was definitely heated. I think Oscar was sort of reacting to what was coming at him, and I think it's chilled since then. Look, he just has to keep it positive and keep it moving. He's running a business. He's got other fighters to worry about other than Ryan. I think it remains to be seen what the next steps are for Ryan as a fighter, where he's at, and the company seems to be doing well as far as staying active in dates ahead. So the thing about working with different fighters, you're going to have different personalities, you're going to have different characters, and you got to put your babysitting hat on, your psychologist hat, your psychologist hat, and kind of wear those. So I credit all the promoters out there have to deal.
I get the sense more and more people are running thin in terms of patience with Ryan. Look, what do you want Oscar to do? He's got a company to run, like you said, that has other fighters. There are certain theories on why he was upset this time. I heard it had to do with some contractual things long term. Let's make this very clear. From what I've been told, Golden Boy Promotions still has some rights, multi-fights with Ryan Garcia. And I think that comes to the point.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Does the multi-fights exceed the years? In other words, is it 3 years or is it 4 fights?
I think it's number of fights.
Number of fights. So regardless, if it takes 5 years,
right? Because the way if those contracts were structured just in terms of time, guess what? Certain guys would just sit out.
You're right.
And I think by contract, you have to offer fights at a certain minimum.
Yes.
And then if you get injured, guess what? That actually then adds a little bit of time to the contract. Again, the devil's in the details. Oh, my good friend from Chicago, Bernie B. What day and time do the dynamic duo arrive in Chicago for the Duarte Sims? And would you be open to do a live 3 Knockdown Rule from the Fight Week press conference? Can you get the time off from NBC? That's the question here, Bernie.
My man. Bernie, first of all, love Chicago. Would love the opportunity to go. Great fight town. And yeah, I'd be down to do a live 3 Knockdown Rule from out there. Let's work on the dates. It's not that long of a flight. I'm down.
And Chicago's good. Good city. Fun city.
Good food.
And I think they're going to have
good time of year right now.
Absolutely.
Final flurries.
Maury, moving on to final flurries. After watching Astroworld on Netflix, if Gia came up to you right now and said, "Dad, I want to go to this music festival. can I go? What would the answer be?
So we watched it together, and it came from her. I didn't even have to say anything. She's like, I never want to go to any of those side of festivals. It was sort of like Scared Straight. Remember that show back in the day when we were kids? And it kind of scared her straight. That shit. And I said, listen, the Astroworlds, the Coachellas, the Stagecoaches, just honey, I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna let you go till later. It's just not too dangerous. You want to go to Staples Center or Crypto,
Hollywood Bowl. We're good.
The Arena, Intuit Dome, no problem. We'll have a good time right there. It's just there's too many other factors, and I think she got it and appreciated that.
The negligence of that event where people were just streaming in, there wasn't a lot of security, and then it was just a free-for-all, and I'm just like, well, what did you think was going to happen?
How did A&G get out? Well, they settled and stuff, but man, that's blood on their hands.
Some of that footage of the people getting crushed, man.
Heartbreaking. Speaking of heartbreaking, this is all part of the doc series Trainwreck, which I gotta say I'm really into now.
It's some funny stuff.
Dude, have you seen Poop Cruise?
Poop Cruise? Are you kidding me? I never wanted to go on a cruise before. Now I really don't want to go.
I saw it twice because it's quick. I saw it once. My wife and I saw it, and then my mom and I got family in town. They watched it, and so I kind of got sucked in and watching it again. Bro, okay. For those not familiar, you haven't seen it, huh, Frazier? This happened, when was it?
2012.
2012. That's exactly what I thought. It was Carnival Cruise Line's Triumph.
Yeah.
There was about 4,500 people on board. And in short, I'm not spoiler because this was all over the news. They had a fire, which was common in these ships at that time. The problem was the fire, when they put it out, burned all the power lines. There was no power. They had no form of communication. They were in the middle of the ocean, stranded with no power. That meant no air conditioning, no showers, no toilets that function, no food you can warm up. So you're basically like stranded with nothing in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of the summer when it's hot. So it was supposed to just be, they were supposed to get a boat that tugged them back to Mexico, a tugboat, but it had drifted so far, over 100 miles. The Mexican government didn't want to exceed past their jurisdiction, so they had to wait and go all the way to Alabama. So they were there for a week. So imagine for a week, people took their mattresses. They couldn't sleep because it was like an oven down there. They slept on the deck all over, and obviously you didn't shower, but here's the worst. You had the women, guys were allowed to pee over the deck. Women could only pee in the shower, but then it all got clogged up.
But the red bags.
And then they gave red bags for the number twos. And for the number twos, and why did, you know what would trip me out? Why did they have to collect the number twos and put them in the trash? Couldn't they just throw them overboard at that point in the middle of the ocean?
That might be considered littering. That could be against rules.
But considering the circumstances, I'm sorry. If I was in that, it was so disgusting. And then they finally start getting tugged, and the boat tilts. All the piss and the crap came out, and it was flooding. People were stepping in 2-3 inches of crap and piss. I told my wife, I said, I would have jumped in the ocean.
What about
I would have took my chances, jumped in the ocean, and that would have been done. I couldn't have hanged. Have you ever been I wanted to throw up watching it.
Well, first of all,
I'm not even doing it justice. Was it this gross?
Well, the way that one chef described how we can never look at lasagna ever again.
So people were pooping still in the toilet. They would poop, put toilet paper, poop again, put toilet paper, and he had a funny accent. It was like lasagna.
Yeah, and he goes, I'll never be able to. At the end, it said he never has eaten lasagna since.
He said he got out of his bed the next day
and he stepped in it,
and it was about 4 to 5 inches of poop and piss. Other people's, by the way. All over, and it was all over the ship. It was just, I'm not even doing it. It was so gross. I wanted to throw up in my mouth.
But it was funny.
Was it? I didn't find it funny. I thought that was crazy.
The whole time.
But the people on it, and so here's the crazy thing. They said they ended up settling the whole thing. Here's the thing. I told my wife, there's no way that boat is going to remain functional. You got to either burn it or you got to sink that boat and you got to make it a reef.
Right.
There's no way I would ever go in the boat. No. We're shit everywhere. So they ended up putting $115 million into that boat to refurbish it. Still wouldn't go on it. That boat, you got to burn it or you got to sink it and make it a reef.
They renamed it.
Am I right? I know they renamed it.
They renamed it. The other thing was the guy that spent time with his father-in-law what a bonding experience.
Dude, that dude held dropping a bomb for 4 days. How do you do that as a man?
No. What about that one lady?
I can't do that for 4 hours.
Her first move was, I just guzzled Imodium.
Yeah. Dude, the whole thing. All right, we're going to talk about the other ones, but if you haven't seen Poop Cruise and you're thinking about going on a cruise, You just check this out.
And speaking of vacations, how was Cancun?
What was better than the poop cruise? I'm gonna tell you that right now. I went to like one of those kind of family friendly resorts. It was like Vegas by the beach. It was good with the kids. The kids had fun. The water parks, this and that. And I finally took a boat. We went fishing and went to, it was a good time. It was a good time with the fam.
Yeah, you caught a big fish.
Yeah, dude, big ass barracuda. Wait, hold on. And there's a true story, and I'm not telling a lie. I swear, I had a 7 to 8 pound shark on the reel. 45 minutes. We're pulling it in.
You're fighting. We're
fighting. But it was on a 30 pound line. I had a 90 pound line because we had them all the boats right there. It's 30 pound line. As soon as it gets to the surface, that motherfucker, he broke the line.
Oh.
Bro, an 8 pound shark. How much did I want? We still got that big barracuda and some tuna, but I wanted that big ass shark. I couldn't even make a fist. 45 minutes, I'm struggling with that shark. That's a true fish story right there. I'm not lying.
Now, the fish that you caught, did you end up skinning it and cooking it and eating it? Is that what you guys do in the resort?
Barracuda, you got to eat it right away to be fresh. And we didn't have the time, this and that, so I gave it to the guys right there, cooked them up. Barracuda, it's good eating, but you got to eat that right away. It's not like tuna you can freeze and all that.
And we're going to have fun this weekend watching the fights.
We're going to watch the fights
It's going to be a good time.
Yeah.
And no switching to the UFC. No switching to the UFC this time.
What did Rudy tell you? You got to be open to it. And overall, this is a great card, or should be a great card, so we'll keep it on the main screen.
It becomes Tom and Jerry.
Do you want to do mariscos or you want to do fried chicken?
Let's do some mariscos. Yeah, it's a
Over
summer.
Fried chicken. Okay.
It's the summer. It's the summer. All right, well, that's it for this week's edition of the 3 Knockdown. We just want to let you know, if you want to sponsor our show, email us at info@boxbid.io. On behalf of Mario Lopez, Smokington Frazier, this is Steve Kim saying till next week, goodbye, everybody.